Welcome to Facing the Moment, brought to you by the Foundation for Self-Leadership. In these episodes, we will address various crises and focus on how to navigate them with abundant fortitude and a bit of hope. As we discuss relevant observations together, we will identify meaningful actions that will generate valuable insights. You can download all episodes on Apple Music, Spotify, and YouTube.
I welcome our listeners to this podcast. And let me start setting this episode in context. Today, we turn our attention to the youth here in the US and around the globe. Concerned about shifts in political, economic, environmental, and social conditions, we can sense and see that they're struggling. Facing uncertainty, anxiety, and in some cases, despair. Like us, they're asking, where do we go from here? Yet I hasten to add that I'm often inspired when I watch with awe and admiration the tenacity by which some are determined to claim a better future for their generation. So as we think about youth today, what should we know? What can be done? How can we help? To start exploring these questions with me, I'm very pleased to be joined today by Fadi Petro. Fadi, welcome. A warm welcome.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Fadi has a background in organizational development and practiced here in the US. He then followed a higher calling, taking him to Jordan, where with his highly caring parents, he's doing what he can to help bring healing emotionally and relationally to those who need it, from refugees and school teachers to emerging leaders in the workplace and elsewhere. Fadi has been trained in the IFS model and is now organizing trainings, combining IFS with other approaches, and hosting youth community forums. He will help us understand what healing and fulfillment look like for a generation caught between chaos and hope. Fadi, what else would you like to add about you, something that you think would be relevant to our conversation today?
Yeah, I think, you gave a pretty good background. I'll just add maybe I was born in Austin, Texas, to Palestinian, Jordanian immigrants. And that, I have a background in organizational development, but I've kind of been shifting away from that a bit and expanding. So, I think that's it.
Well, wonderful. I'm curious to hear more about it as this conversation evolves. So let's start at the top. What are the struggles that you hear from youth today? And how do you interpret the crisis within our youth communities?
Yeah, I think there's a big sense of hopelessness, I think, right now is a big part of it. And that, I think, a huge link to that is also kind of the epidemic of loneliness. We've kind of been isolated a lot more recently in the state of the world. And that combination of those two things has kind of taken a toll on the younger people, and we're struggling maybe to see a bit of a way out from there.
We've been calling it a youth crisis. You know, we see it as emotional, social, and even existential. Mm-hmm. Are our worries about it justified? I'm curious to hear from you about. Are there common issues and concerns among youth, regardless of the geographies, and how are they being manifested? You mentioned loneliness, you mentioned hopelessness. Mm-hmm. Could you elaborate a little bit, and if we can zoom in a bit deeper about the concerns and issues?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of a lot of things. I mean, first of all, you mentioned existential crisis, and I think that's definitely a big thing. Where a lot of people don't know what meaning they bring to the world and what their life's meaning is, and where they fit into the world in that sense. Then there's also like more practical things like the economic crisis and us not being able to buy homes and establish things. Being born and raised in the States, we've kind of told about this American dream, of buying a home and settling down with a partner and children. And having this white picket fence, basically, this beautiful home. And as I got older, and started realizing, wait, I think I can't actually afford this dream that we've been sold. That kind of, yeah, that shifted a little bit of something in me. And then we start looking around the world, and there's all these conflicts going on. And even in our own backyard, we have people not agreeing and not sure where to go from there. So this kind of just collection of things that's been building up has been pretty tough for young people growing up and realizing that, hey, this isn't all we've been told that it was, to grow older and to be in this world.
No, sure. Hearing you talk about this, I feel I want to apologize on behalf of my generation for leaving you with these economic challenges, conflicts like you referred to, climate crisis, instead of ensuring that what we pass on to you is something on which you can build. It seems the situation is challenging to dire even.
Yeah.
So we'll get back to that. I'd like us to turn personal for a moment, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
And I'd like you started talking about your own experience, but I'd like you to go a bit deeper if you can. And I'd like you to identify through your journey so far, things that have stood out, that really triggered you, activated you, concern you more than others. And given that, what can you share about what has shaped your understanding from the individual and collective pain about youth and among youth?
Yeah. I think it's really interesting from my background because I traveled a lot when I was younger. I was born in the States and then moved to the Middle East. And then I think one thing that stuck out to me is, first of all, just how similar everyone is, on a human level. And so once I started realizing that, like, hey, the quote unquote other isn't actually that different and that other, I think that was like a first little light bulb that went off. And then I think one of the experiences I had more recently, yeah, my background was actually, before everything, was in architectural computer-aided design. And so at some point, after the pandemic, I thought I should probably move back to America, start like a regular job, start saving money to buy a home. And those 2 years that I did that, I just, first of all, they were very difficult. It was not a good time. And at the end of the 2 years, I didn't have a whole lot to show for it. So I was like, okay, I just tried to do the right thing in a sense, and settle down and get a proper job and all that. And it felt like I was getting nowhere. And so that kind of flipped a switch, is like, okay, there's something wrong with maybe the system set in place, or I don't know what exactly, but that was really one of the big light bulb moments in my life to realize, hey, yeah, maybe some things need to change. And that's also something I see here in Jordan as well, by the way, like going back to the shared experiences, is people here, they are also just kind of grinding away, trying to make money to buy a home and to start their families and to do whatever. And they're also experiencing a similar kind of disparity between what they feel like they should or want to be doing and what the reality of their life and situation and yeah, whatever is actually like.
Well, that's very insightful, and I'm guessing that this is probably one of the factors that made you decide to switch. That's one of the voices or signs that told you, okay, Fadi, it's time to do something different, better, more fulfilling, more impactful. And I'd like to hear more about that, because clearly when people make these switches in their life, in their career, it's usually, I don't know, a midlife crisis, and you're too young for that. God bless you. Yeah. So, you left the US, went and joined the nonprofit Itra that your parents had developed and to which they are dedicating their whole energy. Please describe to us that journey, if you don't mind. You started kind of talking about, some of the conditions, but let's get inside Fadi, inside his thoughts, feelings. I'm curious about this shift and this new dedication that you're trying to contribute to the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny that you call it a midlife crisis and say that I'm too young for that, where I feel like I've already had, maybe this is my third midlife crisis. Yeah, like I said, I studied architectural computer aided design. So out of high school, I had really no idea what I wanted to do. And I was like, okay, this is kind of in between being artsy and creative and then like mathematical and logical. I thought it was a good little middle ground. But as I got to like my final year, I didn't, I was like, I don't think I want to do this. And so I didn't even register for classes. And I took a semester off and traveled, went to South Korea. And then I came back, finished, and then I finished another degree that was more focused on organizational development and organizational behavior. And that's where I made that first kind of career shift. And that's also when I first moved back to Jordan after being in the States for college. And when I came here, it's funny because one of my conditions was that I would not work for my parents' company, Itra, and that I would work independently. And I also thought at the time that I wanted to focus more on the organizational side of things because I was like, people spend most of their life in their jobs. And if you can make an impact on their work life, then you'll make an impact on their personal life. And so I kind of did that for maybe 7 years. And at the end of that, the pandemic hit. And again, it was a point, I think, where many people's lives changed and kind of they thought of new things that they wanted to do. And that's the point where I decided, okay, I should move back and maybe go back to what I originally studied. And I worked as a project manager for a construction company for luxury homes in Austin. And that was also another big shift, like I shared earlier. But it was also just that, man, I'm building these like almost $2 million homes. And 2 years in, I couldn't even buy an even more basic home than that. And so that's kind of, I left that job. And about that time, there was the stuff in Palestine started back up. And coming from Palestinian origins, I started to dive deep into that. And I came back to Jordan actually just for a visit. And that's where I had the luck of taking that IFS training. And that kind of shifted my perspective on things, where I was previously feeling hopeless. I was able to do a little bit of work on myself, and that gave me this newfound hope. And that's where I made this kind of, hopefully, maybe final shift, but we never know at this point.
Yes, yes. Well, I wish you well. It's just, you're coming to this with great consciousness, and it's. I know, in the moment, some of these experiences and decisions must have been hard, and taxing on you. I'm hoping that you feel good about where you are, and we all keep growing and learning from what's around us, and I hope these experiences continue to be fulfilling to you. And shifting and changing, and being willing to do that, I think is, in my opinion, a sign of deep wisdom, rather than being stuck and accepting, where we are and assuming we have no choice in the matter. Yeah. So you mentioned Itra, and I mentioned Itra a couple of times. The foundation has been watching the organization with great admiration, and at some point we hope to partner with that organization in some fashion. I'm wondering if you don't mind sharing a few words about the mission of Itra and how you are finding in it a mission that may be speaking to your heart, to your mind, and perhaps even to your spirit.
Yeah, absolutely. I do also have to acknowledge that it wasn't just brave, those changes. I also have to acknowledge the privilege that I had to some degree to be able to take those shifts in my life that some people might not have.
Very well said. Thank you for pointing this out.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, Itra, it's a training company. They offer training and coaching, and they have therapists on staff, but their mission is to enrich people's lives. Itra in Arabic means enrichment. And what my parents saw is that by enriching the lives of individuals, they were able to make a bigger impact in the world. So kind of the reverse view that I had in a sense of where it's like, oh, I'll work on organizations and we'll get kind of trickle down enrichment for the world. They saw it the other way as more of a grassroots movement. And so, yeah, they had this model of relational needs training. And the idea of that is that we have our physical needs of like food and oxygen and water, but we also have relational needs. I mean, human beings we're social beings by nature. And so relationships are very important. And so they worked with anything from schools to orphanages to individuals and families to organizations, whether nonprofit or for-profit, and just kind of offered this kind of relational training to everyone here that would take it. And they've been expanding so much in Jordan, and they also opened a second branch in Lebanon, which also has a large team and has been doing incredible work. And so, yeah, I think it's something that's much needed in this world, is learning how to be better relationally with each other.
Yes, thank you. And I'm pleased to see that there is IFS trainings happening in the Arab-speaking Middle East and in Lebanon and Jordan, other places. And we're in contact with Professor Rahmi the way we are with your parents. It's nice to see that. And I'm glad to see this work happening in the Middle East, where we know there is, too much trauma. Too much trauma for any person or community to bear over the years, over the decades. So this is certainly an attempt to bring healing. And now we're talking about healing. Let's go back to the youth crisis, if you don't mind. How are you and your own peers, in your opinion, dealing with the burdensome pressures that the world seems to be exerting on you? Again, political, economic, environmental, and the effect it is having on you as a community of youth.
Yeah, I think many people are dealing with it differently. And even my own personal experience when I was in America versus when I've been here in Jordan has been different. Back when I was in Austin, I didn't really have a great community. And I think that's a big key to dealing with this, is having a good community. And so because I didn't have that, I did other things like just had more hobbies and tried to be creative more, things that would just ground me in the moment. But I think, one thing that a lot of people are realizing is their connections and these communities that they're building is the best way for them to deal with something like this, at least on the very most foundational level of just being able to deal with it, not speaking about the greater changes that we can make, but just being able to live through these times. We need one another in community, and realizing that we are all experiencing this together. We are all in this together, and we're here for one another.
Beautifully said. And my guess is then that the work of Itra and the community that has built around Itra have given you the thing you're looking for, right? Has in a way helped heal, the pain that you've carried, whether you've experienced it as pain or not, and has spoken to your heart, mind, and spirit.
Yes.
I'm not speaking for you, but that's what I'm hearing.
No, it absolutely is true.
Yeah. So, I'd like to learn more about the millennials and the Gen Z cultures, right? I mean, there's a lot that's been written about them, and I'm not one who believes in stereotyping personalities of groups or labeling them simplistically. Yet, as a mental model, it helps us sometimes gain a broader understanding of what makes a generation tick, its values, its aspirations, its constraints. What can you share about that? Are there patterns that seem to emerge for you as you engage with your peers in those two worlds where you seem to operate?
Yeah. And first of all, I just want to appreciate you not generalizing or not wanting to do that, because I think it's a very important thing that we tend to forget. And it's funny because I'm technically a millennial, But I very much identify with a lot of what Gen Z is doing. And so maybe that makes me a good conduit in a sense, although I, again, don't want to speak for anyone, just based off my own personal experience. But yeah, people have this idea of Gen Z that they're kind of lost and don't know what they're doing with their lives. And they just are lazy. They don't want to work. They prioritize the wrong things. And they're not very smart or whatever. There's all these like very broad generalizations. And I think, I mean, what I've seen really through what's been going on is that it's actually really not true. I've seen people seek out knowledge and learn about history and learn about current affairs and learn about so much, and then also be able to articulate that so well in creative ways and pragmatic ways. And so, yeah, I think Gen Z has a lot of power, and we need to take them very seriously and see how we can support them in any way possible. Because, yeah, they come from a totally different perspective. I think one thing that's interesting is, as I look on my experience, my parents, maybe the reason that dream that they were sold, it wasn't so unrealistic then. And that's what they had. They when they immigrated to America, they needed to provide for their family and establish this home and do these things. And there was opportunity for that. But the world we're living in, and I see millennials kind of had to do that. And then Gen Z, they're realizing when it's because that's not working anymore, they're able to kind of take a step back and be like, okay, wait, what's going on here? And they're kind of studying that and articulating that. But yeah, again, because they're not able to do that thing that was sold to them, they're looking at things from a new perspective. And I think that's really unique and refreshing and very much needed in this moment.
And I really truly hope that we can listen to that without judgment, with an open mind, with infinite curiosity. Wisdom is not delegated only to older folks. Not at all. I mean, they say scientists are usually younger, and poets are usually older, but it's so stereotypical, right? I mean, like you talked about generalization. I think every generation brings wisdom that makes us all wiser, right? Together.
Absolutely.
And if we just allow ourselves to listen and understand why and where they're coming from, I think we might be able to solve our societal problems and crises much better. But we have somehow, have you experienced it in your organizations where you worked before? There are silos, there are compartments, right? We've done the same in society, unfortunately. The systems that we have built over the years create these silos unnecessarily and artificially. So I appreciate what you're saying very much. And it really is a reminder to all of us that even calling it a crisis for youth is probably a little narrow-minded, right? We all have different crises. And the reason we want to talk about this today is to see what can we do through the crisis. How can we build, the disposition we need, the wisdom we need to deal with it? And what can we help? How can we help the youth? But what can we also learn from them? I do not want to ignore that piece. So, I've been thinking about, there are some general notions that different groups in the community, think about. And when they define those notions, they get stuck in certain lanes. But we need to understand those notions, like the notion of success. What does it mean to you as as someone, let's say, representing yourself, but also peers of yours that share similar values?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. And I touched a little bit on kind of maybe where I got to, or the way I approach this whole idea of happiness and success. What is that? And I think if I think about my parents' experience, success to them was when they bought their first home and the fact that their children went to college. and the fact that they set up this organization that they're working at. And as I look at younger people that are struggling to maybe buy a home and start families, I think that's where their idea of success is maybe shifting a little bit, or like we're looking at it from a new perspective. And I think I let it slip earlier, but happiness, I think it is like, so what is success? How does success and happiness connect to one another? Because I mean, we see it like even like celebrities and stuff, they make all this money and they're not happy. So are they successful? And I think a lot of young people are realizing that now, is I think success is to be happy, to have your needs met, to be treated with respect and equality, and yeah, to just have your voice heard and be a part of this world in a sense. Yeah, it's kind of all over the place.
No, it's beautiful. I mean, I think you touched upon it, that you said something very important to me, that the notion of success, one, is not universal, and two, is not timeless. It shifts based on the conditions, based on the needs, based maybe on the evolving, spirit of humanity, right? I mean, we evolve physiologically and spiritually as a species. And we're lucky as a species to be able to talk about spirituality, to be able to think in the meta space, which may not be the case, we think, with other species. So, we have to be aware of that and allow for that to happen. So the notion of success is not stagnant, is not constant. It varies. And at the end of the day, it's individual and maybe familial, right? And certainly generational, right? So based on what you're saying. So that's a very important point. So that as we judge other people, as we think about the youth, we need to allow them, and that's really my point, to define what success means to them. Because the issue for us often is, how do they contribute to the greater good? Well, then we have to understand their definition of the greater good. And talking about the greater good, I want to hear the same view from you about peace, this notion of peace. And there's a lot of talk about peace, but by far, most of us wish for peace in our minds and around us. Yet I have to hasten to say that when I hear the word peace in our political circles, I want to say right away the following questions: on whose terms, right? Because that's often the issue with peace. But I'm curious, Fadi, to hear about what peace means to you and what does it look like for you, especially given what you shared with me earlier about where you are and your ancestral heritage.
Yeah. Peace is another word, just like success, where, it's hard to define. I think a lot of people just use peace as a blanket term, and it's a way of, let's just have everyone get along and not have anything going on. And I think I heard an interesting thing before about if there's peace without injustice, like, is that really peace? Because you can have unjust systems and people treated unjustly, but there's no chaos happening or no outward expressions of that injustice. However, that's not people might still consider that peace.
Right. So, you mean, just to make sure it's clear, you mean that peace without justice is incomplete, partial, maybe even meaningless. Okay.
Absolutely. Because I think a lot of people almost like bypass injustice by just saying, let's just have peace. Let's have everyone get along. But peace without that element of justice isn't really peace. And so justice is everyone being treated equally, having equal rights, just being seen as an equal human being. I think this is back to my experience of being a very cross-cultural person. I see everyone as human beings, and a lot of systems that advocate for peace aren't really looking at things like that, about seeing people equally and giving them equal rights. I think peace without justice isn't really peace, and that it's a key part of that is that justice.
Yes, thank you for that. I actually these days don't use the term as much as I would love to, or as much as I used to. I'm a pacifist. I'm like you. I want to see the goodness in every person. I want to see that human spirit in every person, and I want them to see it in me, and then from there, build a system that works rather than start with some, incomplete, erroneous, foundational principles to build upon. And if you look at all human rights declarations around the world, starting in the US and elsewhere, and of course, we understand that 300 years ago, there were some issues in the US, or 250 years ago. So, it's not representative of where we see things today and where we should be seeing things today. Yet the intention is, all humans are created equal, and they should be endowed with certain basic rights and privileges. Just because they breathe the air and share the same needs. And you mentioned that initially about the global stuff. It's also applicable locally, right? That we all hear, whether immigrants, whether, of different generations, different lived experiences, different backgrounds, different legacies. We need to treat each person with due respect. I appreciate that very, very much. Absolutely. And I hope people, can rise to the occasion and help manifest the best of who we are. Mm-hmm. So let's elevate beyond the crisis, or better yet, let's navigate through the crisis, because sometimes we cannot overcome it. We have to just not surrender to it, because we still have, some obligation, moral obligation to one another, perhaps, to stand up and take a stand. And the intention behind this podcast is to figure out how to navigate the crisis with some grit and grace. So I would like us to spend a little time, Fadi, talking about what could generate strength, meaning, action. And let's start with you. Mm-hmm. What do you try to do when you feel overwhelmed? How do you stay grounded? What do you try to hold on to? Please share whatever you're comfortable sharing.
Yeah, I think, again, I think it depends on where I've been at, and at different stages, I've done different things, and I think they're all equally important. Mm-hmm. For example, like during the pandemic, I think one big outlet for me was music. I started writing and just, doing something creative that helped me express myself and work through any feelings that I had at the time. When I was in the States, going out to a park and playing disc golf or something like that, where I was able to be in nature, that was very healing and grounding for me in a sense. And then I think ultimately, I think community is probably the biggest thing, is finding people, because we're all experiencing this together. So being able to connect on that and to share openly with one another about how we're feeling, and recognizing that other people are feeling the same, is a very grounding experience.
Mm. Yeah. If we can be a bit more specific, I'm wondering if there is a paradigm, a thought process, a trick of sorts, or a toolbox of tricks that you resort to in such situations in order to build community, in order to feel better about what's going on, in order to put things in perspective. Maybe you could think of one or two and share with us and elaborate if you can.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I know of an exact thing, but I started so for example, one thing that I did as well, connecting to my Palestinian heritage, was I started tatreez, which is a type of cross-stitch, Palestinian cross-stitch. And through starting this creative hobby, other people started noticing what I was doing, and that invited a conversation, first of all. And through that conversation, I got to know the other better, and asking deep questions to get to know one another. And then I got invited to other cross-stitch communities. And also, I will mention, like, it's interesting because this isn't generally something that men do, for example, yes. But here I am, a 32-year-old male that got into cross-stitching and got invited to a community of cross-stitchers. And through that, we built our little community where, while we do something that grounds us, we're also having these deep conversations of getting to know one another, getting to know what brings us joy, what brings us pain, and all these shared experiences that we have that really connect us on a more a deeper level than just that superficial what we're actually doing.
Well, you're breaking stereotypes again, and that's beautiful. That's really beautiful. So let me ask you even more specifically. When you're in a place of anguish, and different people navigate those moments differently, right? Is there an approach you take? Is there a story you tell yourself? Is there a mantra that you use? I'm just like to get some tips to others to think about and to help listeners who might be exploring how to navigate these moments.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that comes to mind is this quote from Richard Rohr, which is, pain that is not transformed is transmitted. And so I think I mentioned a little bit when I came back to Jordan and was able to take that IFS level 1, it shifted my perspective, because as I started doing the work on myself and working through whether it's my personal traumas, my generational traumas, and understanding my story of who I am, I was able to have a larger capacity to hold more. And so, yeah, again, by approaching myself with the curiosity and compassion and working on my inner world, I was then able to look at the outer world, which, to be honest, is quite overwhelming and yeah, it brings those feelings of despair about. But because I had the space within myself, I was then able to take that in and being more open and approaching it more curiously and confidently with courage, where before I would just want to go and hide and distract myself, or numb from what I was feeling, try to soothe myself through whatever. And now I have that capacity internally that I'm able to hold that and be with the pain of the world, but also the joy of the world. Yeah, I don't know if that quite answers the practical. I can't quite put my finger on this. There was like just a series of things that happened, and it's just changed the way I approach the world.
No, it's fine. It's I'm not looking for a specific answer. I'm really trying to understand, how you come to face this moment, and where you find your resources. Yeah. I like what you shared about pain that's not transformed is transmitted. And it's not only true for a person, it's clearly true for a group, for a community, for a generation, right? I mean, if we look at certain conflicts in the world where the pain has been transmitted from one generation to the next, we probably cannot prove it, scientifically, but it's clear. We see the signs. We hear the interpretation of the experiences.
Yeah.
So in some models, in the IFS model, they call this legacy burdens that gets carried over because it hasn't been transformed. Thank you, Fadi, for that thought. It is often said that the digital world and the effects of the pandemic have driven deeper disconnect among people and communities, perhaps especially youth. And you were talking about connectedness earlier, and connection. How do you think our involvement in the digital world, and there's a lot been written about that, but I want to hear it from you directly. How do you think that's establishing or re-establishing or de-establishing connectedness?
Yeah, I think it's very much a two-edged sword. I think it has, you have to hold two things true at once when talking about connection in the online world and so like social media, whatever. Because on the one hand, it's very disconnecting and disengaging in a way to just, go to your phone or go to social media and to just disconnect through that. And also at the same time, on the other hand, it's connecting people all across the world. We're hearing viewpoints from people who we might never have heard their voice before and heard their story before. So I think that's another tricky thing that you have to navigate, where, You need to be grounded in reality and use it as a tool, just like any tool in life. It can either be used for harm or be used for good. And if you're using these things to escape and to disconnect, then it might be doing more harm than good. If you're using it to connect with people all around the world, to educate yourself, to hear people's stories and their experiences, then I think it can very much be a connecting tool. But yeah, it's in that tricky spot where it's kind of how you use it as a tool.
What can we do, the non-youth, even though many of us are youthful at heart? What might we do to help strengthen the connection among youth and with us?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing is to be open and curious. Listen to what we have to say. And even younger people, listen to what they have to say. Yes, you hold a huge amount of wisdom and experience, and it's a wealth of treasure of knowledge. But at the same time, our experience is also valid and needs to be heard, because otherwise we can't make these transformations and change the way things are. We need everyone to kind of be in agreement, and not even necessarily agreement, but just connected in some way where we hear what each other are saying. And then, and to take us seriously, because it's very easy when you have more experience and more wisdom and whatever it is to then want to disregard everything else. But I think everyone's experience and voice is valid. So we need to take that seriously and champion it as well. When we hear people say something that is in fact true, platform that and share it with others and say, hey, like this person made a very good point, and I think this needs to be added to the discussion. So yeah, I think that's the biggest thing, is to just listen to one another and try to connect through this curiosity and compassion and a place of wanting to understand each other, and work towards a positive, greater good, whatever that may look like.
Thank you for this warm invitation and stark invitation. I think many of us, me included, need to be reminded of that. And I invite our listeners to keep that in mind as well. Before we move to the last segment of this episode, where we can recap and maybe share a few more tips with the listeners, I'd like to hear your vision for the youth in our world, given your journey, your work with Itra, your own experiences, the way you approach things. You're very perceptive. You can look at things from way high up. What are some of those things you can share with us about your vision for the youth in our world?
Yeah, so I don't know if I can speak for all youth, but I can share my personal vision. And that's just, living in a world where everyone is more connected and compassionate toward each other, and where there's justice and peace, because they're both important. And what that looks like is treating everyone equally, giving people rights, people having their own human agency to live their lives as they wish to live it, while also recognizing that we are all connected in this community. So yeah, I don't know if I have an exactly clear vision, but it's approaching people and letting people do what they want with this sense of compassion and curiosity, and that we're all connected. And my life being better is also going to help your life be better. And how can we work together to achieve greater things in the world? Yeah, again, it's not a very clear vision, but
I think it's very clear, Fadi, because it's a vision grounded in aspirational values and deep human-centered principles.
Yeah.
I wish people shared that vision, because then we'll have a shared journey as a human race. So at the risk of reiterating what you may have already said, what do you think it will take? And this is a big question that everyone struggles with, but just see what comes up for you. What do you think it could take for us to get there?
Yeah, that is a, a big question. I think it starts on the ground. Like I said, I previously had always thought we make the change from the top down. I used to work with these massive organizations that had huge reach, and I thought that that was going to make a bigger difference in the world. But I think as I have gotten older and had more experiences, I've learned that it actually begins with our work on ourselves. So as I have embarked on my healing journey and understanding myself better, my system better, I am then able to connect with others on a deeper level. This isn't just superficial friendships of, hey, how was your day? Like, we're getting to know each other. What are our deep values? How do we respect and value these things in one another and all of our experiences? And through creating those relationships, I'm then also strengthening my community and building up on those values within my whole community. And as a result, my hope is that then we see a change in the world as well. Because yeah, the individuals, we're the one, like, we all make up the world. Yes, there are systems in place, but humanity is what makes the world unique, and what makes humankind unique is our connection to one another and being social beings. So yeah, just working on myself, and then as a result, my community, and my hope is then that amplifies and ripples into the world, and creates a larger change than the sum of each individual's impact.
Well, thank you again for this wisdom that you carry, Fadi, and the way you're sharing it with me in a very clear, crisp way. Just an invitation, really, because I was going to ask you. You invited the non-youth group, so to speak, to listen and be curious, and I think you may have just shared with me what you could suggest to your peers. And if you think you want to say a few more about, how they can help deal with what they're facing, please share. Because what's important to me is that many are already contributing significantly, creatively, tenaciously, and that's very inspiring. I want to emphasize that we talk about the concern, and we do not want to lose sight of the fact that so many are on the front lines doing what they believe they need to do. In some cases, firmly and respectfully, and in some cases a bit more militantly, which is not my cup of tea. But there's room for nonviolence and in changing the reality that is affecting a certain community. So anything you'd like to share in terms of suggestions to your peers, to this community of youth?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you made a really good point. And I think, well, many people are kind of doing their own journeys of self-healing and self-discovery. Like, that is kind of a general trend among younger people. I think it's very important that people not maybe try to bypass it by just using boundaries. I think this term boundaries, people just use it to build up walls around themselves. And yes, that can protect you, but that's also blocking all the good as well. So recognizing this common humanity and doing the work so that you can build connection, and approach people more openly. And yeah, again, like, if we think of that pain that is not transformed is transmitted, and a lot of these people that are maybe trying to fight oppression and injustice in the world, they think it's just about the resistance. And what does resistance mean? But I think there's a bigger key to that it also has to include healing. If they don't heal and work with this, then they're just going to, again, go and transmit that to someone else, or just totally block off the connection, which also is harming in some way. So being able to heal and build that and use this to build connection is just as important as working against injustice in the world.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. For some folks, the term healing doesn't translate well, right? People think of healing as healing from a physical wound,
Yeah.
Which is an important aspect of healing, right? We live in a body, but we also have emotions and we have dignity. And when these things are violated, when our sense of comfort or sense of stability or sense of balance are somehow, attacked, whether purposefully or inadvertently, we experience certain feelings and we experience certain pain. Sometimes we shut it out because, we're not supposed to express it publicly. But when we don't address it, when we don't try to understand why it's there and what's at its root cause and how we can deal with it, like you said, not only does it get transmitted, but it also deepens its grip on us, right? And we might not be able to easily get from under that. So I think that's what you mean by healing, dealing with these issues that stop us from being successful, whatever the definition of success is, happy, whatever the definition of happiness is, contribute to justice and peace, in ways that allows humanity to stay connected. If I didn't capture this very well, please give me your own thought of healing, because everything we do is about healing and well-being. And yet the notion of that in the outer world, in the world of, fast lane movement and conflicts is often misunderstood or at least dismissed. What can you say about healing, Fadi?
Yeah, you made a really good point. Healing, I mean, some people look at that differently and they might think of, just pushing the pain aside or not, moving past the feeling of those emotions and those experiences. But I think it's usually the opposite. It's we need to witness what's going on and feel that and understand what that means, but then also being able to consciously and intentionally do something that is practical and also healing, like fixing to the world in a sense, because a lot of times we sit with the emotion and then we start reacting out of that emotion. And I think we've gotten to become very reactive, especially when somebody else maybe doesn't recognize the pain that you're going through and the emotions that you're feeling. It almost comes as like an invitation to, okay, let me show you what it is. And we start getting reactive to make them feel what you're feeling. But that doesn't make us feel better, and that doesn't make them feel better. So we have to work through our experiences, and it's not to invalidate them. It's the exact opposite. It's to validate exactly what we went through. Yes, it was difficult. And I can sit with that and understand that and hear the story that I tell myself, but also not turn around and then just want to react from that point of pain, but to validate the experience and then say, okay, what can I do that is actually gonna fix things in the world, that's actually gonna offer something better for the world? From this point of pain, what can we do to create something even better, rather than using that as fuel to then damage somebody even more than we felt damaged or hurt in the first place?
Thank you. A beautiful way to end this very, very engaging conversation, Fadi. And hopefully it's not the only conversation we have in this podcast program. So I'd just like to close by thanking the listeners for joining and telling them, as you heard, the youth crisis is real. Yet, as Fadi showed us, and just as real is each youth's potential to lead from a place of confidence, maybe courage, perhaps clarity, and certainly connectedness. Seeing the human spirit in each of us, seeing the shared experience and the shared desire to live together and coexist in ways that support and build each one up. And if this episode moved you, please look for a community of peers to be engaged with. And if you're older by age and youthful in your heart, please pay attention to youth around you. listen, and help them build a better bridge to their future. And I'm going to give you the last word, Fadi. Thank you so much for being with me. What gives you hope and resilience in this very moment?
That's a deep question. But yeah, again, it's just recognizing that we're all connected. And if I can't have that hope for myself, then I can't have that hope for others or for the world. So yeah, approaching everyone with that compassion and curiosity, and then confidently standing up for what I believe, the values that I hold dear to me. And yeah, just seeing how other people are also having these conversations and being moved to do something, whether I agree with that or not, that gives me hope that it affects people enough that they want to do something. So what can I offer to this world, in aid of that, to help them to do it in a useful way? So yeah, I just use whatever my tools and my experience that gave myself hope to also offer that to others as hope as well, and aid them in their journeys.
Thank you, Fadi. Thank you.
Thanks for listening. Facing the Moment is an independent production of the Foundation for Self-Leadership, a nonprofit committed to bringing emotional, relational, and societal healing and well-being to a world in need. Learn more at foundationifs.org. You can download this and all other episodes on Apple Music, Spotify, and YouTube. Until the next episode, may we all keep facing the moment with grit and grace.